Kate Morrison stood in the command center of New Haven Colony and watched the worst news of her life appear on the main screen. The red dots moving toward their solar system meant death for everyone she had sworn to protect. Her hands shook as she counted the enemy ships on the display. 200 vessels approached their small mining world at the edge of human space. Dr. Allen Carter pushed his glasses up his nose and ran the numbers again. He hoped his calculations were wrong, but the computer gave him the same answer every time. The alien fleet would reach New Haven in 71 hours and 36 minutes. Their weapons could destroy the colony in less than 10 minutes after arrival. The aliens belonged to the Kethvar Empire. Every human in the galaxy knew that name and feared it. The Kethvar took prisoners only when they needed slaves. They killed everyone else without mercy. Their gray ships with sharp edges had destroyed dozens of human settlements over the past decade. Jake Phillips walked into the command center with dirt still on his mining clothes. His crew had been working deep underground when the emergency alarm sounded. Now he looked at the screen and understood why Kate had called everyone to the surface. The big man crossed his arms and stared at the red dots that meant the end of everything they had built. "How long do we have?" Jake asked Kate, in his rough voice. "Less than 3 days," Kate replied while trying to keep her voice steady. "Dr. Carter says they will be here by Thursday morning." Lisa Hayes sat at the communications station and typed messages on her keyboard. Her job was to send distress calls to every human world and military base within range of their transmitters. She had been sending the same message for the past 2 hours, but nobody had answered yet. The nearest Earth Defense Force base was 6 months away by normal space travel. The other human colonies close enough to help had only small patrol ships and cargo vessels. None of them could fight a Kethvar war fleet and survive. Bobby Turner commanded the colony security force of 30 men and women. They had training to handle miners who drank too much or settlers who argued over land claims. They were not soldiers ready to fight alien warriors who had conquered half the galaxy. Bobby knew his people would try their best, but it would not be enough. New Haven was home to 50,000 people. Most of them worked in the mining operations that pulled rare metals from the planet's crust. Others ran shops and schools and hospitals that made the colony a real community. Children played in the streets, while their parents built homes and planned for the future. Kate thought about all those families as she watched the alien fleet move closer. The colony had 3 old patrol ships that barely had working weapons. Their defense platforms around the planet were designed to stop pirates and smugglers, not a military invasion force. Everything they could use to fight would be destroyed. In the first few minutes of battle. Dr. Carter pulled up more data on his computer screen. He studied the Kethvar ships and their probable weapons loadout. The aliens used plasma cannons that could melt through the strongest human armor. Their shields could stop most human weapons. Their soldiers wore powered armor and carried energy, rifles that cut through normal protection like paper. "We need to evacuate the civilians," Dr. Carter said to Kate while pointing at his calculations. "The colony transport ships can carry maybe 5,000 people to the nearest system. That leaves 45,000 behind," Kate replied with sadness in her voice. "We don't have enough ships or enough time." Jake Phillips had spent 20 years building New Haven from nothing but empty land and big dreams. He would not run away and leave everything to the aliens. His mining crews were tough people who knew how to work hard and solve problems. Maybe they could not win against the Kethvar, but they would make the aliens pay for every meter of ground. "My people won't leave," Jake told Kate and Dr. Carter. "This is our home. We built it with our own hands and our own sweat. If we're going to die here, then we die fighting." Lisa Hayes continued sending distress calls while listening to the conversation. She had tried every frequency and every emergency channel known to human space. The messages went out into the darkness, but no help was coming. The colony was too far from Earth, and too small for anyone to risk their own ships trying to save. Bobby Turner called his security teams together for an emergency meeting. They gathered in the small armory where they kept their riot guns and crowd control equipment. None of them had ever been in a real battle, but they would do their duty to protect the colonists. Bobby assigned his people to different parts of the colony and told them to prepare defensive positions. The first day passed with no response to their calls for help. Kate Morrison walked through the colony streets and saw families packing their most important belongings. Some people cried while others stood silent and grim. The children asked questions their parents could not answer. Evening came, and the alien fleet was one day closer. Kate held a colony meeting in the main assembly hall. People packed the building until there was no room left to stand. She told them the truth about their situation because they deserved to know. "The Kethver will be here in 2 days," Kate said from the platform at the front of the hall. "We have sent distress calls, but help is too far away. We must decide together how we will face what is coming." An old woman in the front row stood up slowly. Her name was Grace Miller, and she had lived through 3 different colony disasters. "We knew the risks when we came here," she said in a clear voice. "Nobody forced us to build homes at the edge of space. This is still our choice to make." Jake Phillips stood up next. "I say we fight. My crews know how to use mining equipment as weapons. We can make it hard for them to take our world." Dr. Carter raised his hand to speak. "The transport ships can take some of our people to safety. We should save who we can." "And who decides who lives and who dies?" asked a man from the back of the hall. "How do we choose which families get to leave and which ones stay behind to face the aliens?" The argument went on for hours, but no good answers came from it. They could not save everyone, and they could not fight the Kethver war fleet with mining tools and security weapons. Kate Morrison felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders as she tried to find hope where none existed. On the second day, Lisa Hayes received a transmission that made her blood run cold. The message came from the Kethver fleet commander and was broadcast on all frequencies so everyone in the colony could hear it. The alien voice was harsh and full of contempt. "For human life, humans of New Haven," the Kethver commander said through the speakers. "I am War Commander, Toes of the Imperial Fleet. You have 48 hours to surrender your world and prepare for processing. Resistance will only increase your suffering. We have dealt with your kind before." The transmission ended with recordings from other human colonies that had fallen to the Kethvar. The sounds of battle and death echoed through New Haven's communication system. Kate Morrison ordered Lisa Hayes to cut the signal, but everyone had already heard enough to understand their fate. Bobby Turner gathered his security teams and told them to prepare the underground shelters. If they could not fight the aliens directly, then maybe some people could hide until rescue came. The shelters had been built to protect against storms and equipment failures. They were not designed to hide 50,000 people from alien soldiers. Dr. Carter worked through the second night, trying to find options they had missed. He studied star charts and shipping schedules and military databases. Nothing he found offered any hope for New Haven. The colony was alone and defenseless at the edge of human space. Jake Phillips organized his mining crews into work groups. They would use their equipment to dig fighting positions and set up barriers around the most important buildings. It would not stop the Kethver, but it might slow them down. Every minute they could buy might give someone else time to escape. Kate Morrison stood on the observation deck of the command center and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the alien fleet moved closer to her world. In less than 2 days, those ships would arrive, and everything she had worked to build would be destroyed. She closed her eyes and made a silent promise to the people of New Haven. She would not let them face the end alone. Lisa Hayes almost dropped her coffee when the impossible signal appeared on her communication console. She had been monitoring space for incoming transmissions since the crisis began, but this was different from anything she had ever seen. The signal was strong and clear, like the sender was right next to New Haven instead of light years away. She called Dr. Carter over to look at the readings. The scientist studied the data and frowned at what he saw. According to their equipment, the transmission was coming from inside their own solar system, but their sensors showed empty space. Either their instruments were broken, or someone was using technology that could hide entire fleets from detection. Kate Morrison hurried to the communication station when Lisa told her about the signal. The colony administrator felt her heart beating fast as she authorized Lisa to open the channel. Maybe their distress calls had finally reached someone who could help them. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional. It belonged to a human military officer who spoke with complete confidence. New Haven Colony, this is Admiral John Parker, commanding the Earth Defense Force Deep Strike Fleet. We have received your distress call and are moving to assist. Prepare your people for emergency shelter procedures. Lisa Hayes stared at her console in confusion. She had never heard of the Deep Strike Fleet, and her military communication codes did not include any Admiral John Parker. The Earth Defense Force database showed no record of such a unit or commander. Yet the signal was definitely coming from human equipment using proper military encryption. Admiral Parker, this is Colony Administrator Kate Morrison, she replied into her microphone. Can you confirm your position and estimated time of arrival? We have less than 40 hours before the Kethfer fleet reaches our system. Confirmed, New Haven, came the reply. Maintain communications silence after this transmission. Move all civilians to reinforced shelters immediately. Be prepared for significant orbital activity. Deep Strike Fleet out. The transmission ended and left the command center in stunned silence. Dr. Carter ran calculations on his computer while Lisa Hayes tried to re-establish contact with the mysterious fleet. Kate Morrison felt hope and fear fighting in her chest as she tried to understand what was happening. Bobby Turner arrived at the command center after hearing about the transmission. His security teams had been working to prepare defensive positions, but now they might need to focus on getting people to safety instead. He asked Kate what the military commander had meant by significant orbital activity. I think it means there's going to be a space battle, Kate replied while looking at the star charts on the main screen. But I don't understand how any human fleet could get here so fast. The nearest Earth Defense Force base is months away by conventional travel. Jake Phillips joined the group and listened to a recording of Admiral Parker's message. The mining foreman had spent time in the military before coming to New Haven, and he recognized the tone of an experienced combat commander. Whoever this Admiral Parker was, he sounded like someone who had fought real battles and won them. Maybe Earth has secret ships we don't know about, Jake suggested while studying the communication logs. The military doesn't tell civilians everything about their capabilities. Dr. Carter shook his head and pointed at his calculations. Even the fastest human ships would take weeks to reach us from Earth. This Admiral Parker would have needed to leave before we sent our distress call. How could he know we were going to be attacked? Lisa Hayes continued trying to scan for the mysterious fleet, but her sensors found nothing. Space around New Haven looked as empty as it had the day before. Yet something had sent that transmission, and it was powerful enough to reach them with perfect clarity. The equipment required for such a signal would need to be massive. Bobby Turner organized the evacuation to the underground shelters. His security teams went door to door, telling families to pack emergency supplies and move to the reinforced areas. Beneath the colony, most people were confused about why they needed to hide if help was coming, but they followed orders. Kate Morrison called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. They gathered in the command center conference room while Lisa Hayes monitored communications and Dr. Carter tracked the approaching alien fleet. The Kethver ships were still almost 2 days away, but they would be sending scout vessels ahead of the main force. "We need to decide what to do," Kate told the group. "This Admiral Parker might be real, or he might be some kind of alien trick. We can't risk the lives of 50,000 people on a message we can't verify." "The encryption was definitely human," Lisa said while reviewing her technical logs. "The Kethver don't use our military codes, and they couldn't fake this kind of signal without our equipment." Dr. Carter pulled up star charts and shipping schedules on his portable computer. He had been searching databases all morning, trying to find any reference to the Deep Strike Fleet or Admiral Parker. The man seemed to exist only in classified military files that were beyond his security clearance. "There are rumors," Dr. Carter said quietly. "Stories about secret Earth Defense Force units that operate outside normal command structures. Scientists who worked on experimental projects before being transferred to classified assignments. Maybe this Deep Strike Fleet is one of those black projects." Jake Phillips had his own theory about the mysterious transmission. During his military service, he had heard whispers about special forces units that used advanced technology for rapid deployment missions. These units supposedly had ships and weapons that were decades ahead of standard military equipment. "The timing is too perfect to be coincidence," Jake said while pacing around the conference room. "If this Admiral Parker is real, then Earth has been watching the frontier colonies more closely than we thought. They might have had ships positioned to respond to exactly this kind of threat." Bobby Turner was more concerned about immediate security than long-term explanations. His people were getting nervous about the conflicting orders to prepare for battle and hide in shelters. They needed clear instructions about what to do when the aliens arrived. "If help is coming, then we need to stay out of the way," Bobby said. "If help isn't coming, then we need to be ready to fight. We can't do both at the same time." Kate Morrison made the decision that would affect everyone in the colony. They would follow Admiral Parker's instructions and move people to the underground shelters. If the mysterious fleet was real, then the civilians would be protected during the space battle. If it was a trick, then at least some people might survive. In the reinforced areas, the evacuation began immediately. Families carried bags of clothing and food into the tunnel systems beneath New Haven. The underground areas had been designed to hold a few hundred people during emergencies, but now they needed to accommodate 50,000 colonists. Children asked their parents why they had to leave their homes and hide underground. The adults gave them simple answers about staying safe, while the grown-ups dealt with problems in space. Many of the children were excited about the adventure of camping in the tunnels with all their friends. Dr. Carter worked with Bobby Turner to organize the shelter areas. He set up sleeping spaces and eating areas and emergency medical stations. The colony's doctors and nurses prepared to treat injuries if the worst happened. Everyone hoped they would not need the medical supplies. Lisa Hayes maintained her watch at the communication station, even though Admiral Parker had ordered radio silence. She scanned all frequencies for any sign of the mysterious fleet or additional messages from the aliens. The space around New Haven remained quiet, except for the distant signals from the approaching Kethver Armada. Evening came, and most of the colony had moved underground. Kate Morrison walked through the empty streets and felt like she was looking at a ghost town. Windows were dark and doors were locked. Only essential personnel remained at their posts to monitor the situation and maintain basic systems. Jake Phillips kept some of his mining crews above ground to operate the heavy equipment. If the promised help did not arrive, then his people would need to be ready to fight with whatever weapons they could improvise. The mining lasers and excavation charges were not military weapons, but they could still hurt alien soldiers. Commander Thektos sent his scout ships ahead of the main Kethver fleet. The alien commander wanted to study New Haven's defenses before committing his full force to the attack. His scouts would arrive at the edge of the solar system in less than 12 hours. The Kethver had conquered dozens of human colonies over the past decade. The pattern was always the same. Humans sent desperate distress calls that nobody answered. Human military forces were too few and too far away to provide assistance. The colonies fell quickly, and their populations became slaves or corpses. Thektos expected New Haven to follow the same pattern. His intelligence reports showed a small mining colony with minimal defenses and no military support. The conquest would be routine and profitable. His soldiers would enjoy hunting the humans who tried to hide in their primitive shelters. Dr. Carter spent the night analyzing every piece of data he could find about the mysterious transmission. The signal had used quantum encryption methods that were supposed to be experimental. Only the most advanced Earth Defense Force research facilities had access to such technology. Space around New Haven began to bend and twist in ways that made no sense to anyone watching. Dr. Carter stared at his instruments and saw readings that should have been impossible. Reality itself seemed to be folding like paper as something enormous prepared to enter normal space. Lisa Hayes felt her communication equipment overload with energy signatures she had never seen before. The power levels were so high that her console sparked and went dark for several seconds before backup systems came online. When the displays returned, they showed space filled with shapes that dwarfed anything in human experience. The Earth Defense Force Deep Strike Fleet emerged from hyperspace like nightmares made real. 500 ships of unknown design dropped into the New Haven system with such force that the planet's gravity sensors registered the event as a minor earthquake. The massive vessels gleamed with dark metal and bristled with weapon systems that hummed with barely contained energy. At the center of the formation hung the dreadnought EDS Retribution. The flagship was 3 kilometers long and packed with enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. Its hull bore scars from battles fought in distant systems against enemies the colonists of New Haven had never heard of. Admiral John Parker stood on the bridge of this monster and surveyed the tactical situation. Kate Morrison watched the emergence from the colony command center and felt her legs go weak. The human fleet that had appeared in their system was larger and more advanced than Don's anything she had imagined possible. These ships looked nothing like the Earth Defense Force vessels she had seen in news, broadcasts, and military documentaries. Colonel Steve Baker sat at the tactical station aboard the EDS Retribution and coordinated the deployment of the entire fleet. His console showed the positions of every ship and the status of weapon systems that could reshape the battlefield in seconds. The Deep Strike Fleet had trained for this moment for years, and every officer knew their role perfectly. Captain Amy Foster commanded the destroyer EDS Vanguard and received her orders through the Fleet Command Network. Her squadron would engage the Kethver scouts while the main battle line positioned itself for the larger conflict. The enemy aliens had no idea what kind of force they were about to face. Fighter pilot Lieutenant Sam Cooper launched from the carrier EDZ, dauntless along with 49 other pilots flying humanity's most advanced starfighters. Their ships used gravity manipulation drives that allowed them to perform maneuvers that violated basic physics. The fighters moved through space like living things hunting for prey. Bobby Turner emerged from the underground shelters when his seismic sensors detected the fleet's arrival. He looked up at the night sky and saw new stars that pulsed with artificial light. The mysterious Admiral Parker had kept his promise and brought help to New Haven. Now Bobby understood why they had been ordered to take shelter. Jake Phillips climbed to the highest observation tower in the mining complex to get a better view of the human fleet. Through his binoculars, he could see ship designs that belonged in science fiction stories rather than real military operations. These vessels had come from somewhere beyond the known territories of human space. War. Commander Thektos received reports from his scout ships and refused to believe what his officers were telling him. No human fleet of this size should exist according to Kethfor intelligence. The aliens had been monitoring Earth's military capabilities for decades and had never detected anything approaching this level of technology. The Kethvar commander studied the sensor, readings from his scouts, and felt something his species rarely experienced. Fear crept into his thoughts as he realized his armada might be facing an enemy that could actually threaten their survival. The human ships radiated power signatures that exceeded his own flagship. Dr. Carter connected his personal computer to the colony's main sensor array and began analyzing the human fleet. The energy readings from their engines suggested propulsion systems based on manipulation of space-time itself. These ships could travel between star systems in days rather than months. Admiral John Parker opened a communication channel to New Haven Colony and spoke in the same calm voice they had heard before. New Haven, this is Admiral Parker. All civilians are to remain in shelters until the tactical situation is resolved. We are beginning combat operations against hostile forces. Lisa Hayes acknowledged the transmission from her restored communication station. The power emanating from the human fleet had overwhelmed her equipment, but backup systems were now functioning normally. She could detect tight beam communications between the Earth Defense Force ships as they prepared for battle. Captain Amy Foster's destroyer squadron accelerated toward the edge of the solar system, where Kethvar scouts were conducting reconnaissance. The alien ships detected the approaching humans and tried to retreat, but found themselves outmatched in speed and maneuverability. The human destroyers moved like predators, closing in for the kill. The first engagement began when the lead Keth-4 scout ship opened fire on the EDS Vanguard. Plasma bolts that could penetrate standard human armor struck the destroyer's shields and simply vanished. Captain Foster's ship absorbed the alien weapon's fire without taking any damage at all. The EDS Vanguard responded with quantum cannons that tore through Kethfor shields and armor like they were made of tissue paper. The alien scout ship exploded in a flash of superheated metal and escaping atmosphere. 3 more scout vessels died in the next 30 seconds as human weapons demonstrated their overwhelming superiority. Colonel Steve Baker watched the tactical display and marked the first enemy casualties. The Kethvar scouts had been eliminated with minimal expenditure of ammunition. Now the alien main fleet would know they faced an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before. Lieutenant Sam Cooper led his fighter wing in a sweep of the outer system to ensure no enemy ships escaped to report the fleet's capabilities. His pilots found 2 more Kethvar vessels attempting to hide behind a gas giant's moon. The fighters attacked with precision strikes that crippled the aliens without destroying them. War Commander Thektos received the final transmission from his scout force before they were destroyed. The brief message contained sensor data that made no sense according to everything the Kethvar knew about human military technology. These ships used weapons that manipulated matter at the quantum level. The alien commander called his fleet to battle stations and prepared to face an enemy that might actually be dangerous. For the first time in his career, Thektos considered the possibility that his armada might not achieve an easy victory. The humans had somehow developed capabilities that rivaled the greatest powers in the galaxy. Admiral Parker studied the tactical situation from his command chair aboard the EDS Retribution. The Kethvar main fleet was still 18 hours away from New Haven, but their scouts had been eliminated. Now the aliens would approach with full knowledge that they faced a serious threat. Kate Morrison broadcasted an update to the people hiding in the underground shelters. The mysterious human fleet had arrived and destroyed the first wave of alien attackers. She could hear cheering echoing through the tunnel systems as families realized they might actually survive the crisis. Dr. Carter analyzed the debris from the destroyed Kethver scouts and made disturbing discoveries. The alien ships contained navigation data showing the location of a massive Kethver base deep in unexplored space. New Haven was not facing a random raid, but a scouting mission for a much larger invasion. Bobby Turner organized his security teams to help coordinate the evacuation if it became necessary. The human fleet was clearly powerful, but nobody knew how the main battle would develop. His people needed to be ready for any outcome, including a fighting retreat from the colony. Jake Phillips watched more human ships deploy throughout the solar system. Massive carriers launched squadrons of fighters, while battleships took positions near the major planets. The Earth Defense Force was not just responding to a single threat, but establishing complete control over New Haven space. The EDS Retribution began charging its primary weapon systems. Energy readings from the Dreadnought's main cannons exceeded anything in known military databases. Admiral Parker's flagship carried firepower capable of destroying entire enemy fleets with a single coordinated barrage. Captain Foster received new orders to patrol the inner system and protect the civilian population. Her destroyer squadron would serve as the last line of defense if any alien ships broke through the main battle line. The Earth Defense Force was taking no chances with the safety of New Haven's people. Lieutenant Cooper and his fighter pilots established a protective screen around the planet itself. Their advanced starfighters could intercept incoming weapons fire or attacking ships before they could threaten the surface installations. The pilots had trained for years to protect human civilians from alien aggression. Colonel Baker coordinated the deployment of specialized vessels that carried weapons too dangerous to use near inhabited worlds. These ships positioned themselves at the edge of the solar system, where they could engage the Kethver fleet without risking collateral damage to New Haven. War. Commander Thektos made the decision that would determine the fate of his empire. Instead of retreating to report the unexpected human capabilities, he chose to attack with his full force. The first shots of the battle came from Captain Amy Foster's destroyer squadron as they engaged the remaining Kethver scout ships trying to escape the system. The aliens had sent these vessels ahead to gather intelligence, but now they became the opening casualties of a conflict that would reshape the balance of power in this sector of space. The EDS Vanguard's quantum cannons fired precise bursts of energy that bypassed the aliens' defensive shields entirely. The Kethver had designed their protection systems to stop conventional human weapons, but these new guns operated on principles that made their shields useless. 3 enemy vessels exploded in quick succession as Captain Foster's weapons found their marks. Lieutenant Sam Cooper led his fighter wing against a cluster of Kethver corvettes that were attempting to circle around the human battle line. His advanced starfighter dove through space using gravity manipulation systems that allowed impossible changes in direction. The alien pilots could not track his movements as he lined up attack runs on their engine systems. War Commander Thektos watched his scout forces being destroyed and realized he faced human technology that exceeded his worst fears. The aliens had built their empire by conquering species with inferior weapons and tactics. Now they encountered an enemy that possessed capabilities beyond their understanding. The main Kethver fleet accelerated toward the human formation at maximum speed. 200 alien warships arranged themselves in the traditional attack pattern that had brought them victory in dozens of previous campaigns. Thektos intended to overwhelm the humans through sheer numbers and firepower. Admiral John Parker studied the enemy approach from his command position aboard the EDS Retribution. The Kethver were using outdated tactics against an opponent they did not understand. Their mistake would cost them everything, as the Deep Strike Fleet demonstrated the true meaning of technological superiority. Colonel Steve Baker coordinated the human response from his tactical station. Every ship in the Earth Defense Force fleet knew its role and target assignments. The battle plan had been rehearsed countless times during training exercises, but this would be the first real test of their capabilities against a major alien force. The engagement began when the leading Kethfer battleships entered maximum range of their plasma cannons. Bolts of superheated matter streaked across space toward the human fleet at significant fractions of light speed. The aliens expected to see human ships destroyed or crippled by their opening barrage. Instead, the plasma bolts struck the human vessels and simply vanished. The Earth Defense Force ships used defensive systems that manipulated space-time itself to redirect incoming energy attacks. The Kethfer weapons that had destroyed countless enemies before now proved completely ineffective. Captain Foster received new targeting data and opened fire with her destroyer's main batteries. The quantum cannons sent coherent beams of destructive force that penetrated Kethvar armor like it was made of paper. Enemy ships began exploding along their battle line as human weapons found critical systems and ammunition stores. Lieutenant Cooper's fighter squadron attacked the alien fleet's flanks, using tactics that took advantage of their superior speed and maneuverability. The human pilots targeted specific subsystems with surgical precision rather than trying to destroy entire ships. Disabled Kethfor vessels drifted helplessly as their engines and weapons went offline. War. Commander Thektos ordered his fleet to close range and engage in direct combat. The alien commander hoped that superior numbers would compensate for the humans' technological advantages. His ships moved forward into what he believed would be a decisive melee engagement. The EDS, Retribution, entered the battle with weapons that redefined the concept of naval combat. Admiral Parker's flagship carried gravitational cannons that could create artificial black holes and temporal disruptors that aged enemy ships to destruction in seconds. When the dreadnought opened fire, reality itself seemed to bend around its targets. Kethfer battleships found themselves trapped in gravity wells that compressed their hulls until the metal screamed and failed. Other alien vessels aged centuries in moments as temporal weapons accelerated their decay beyond the point of structural integrity. The flagship's assault was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Dr. Carter monitored the battle from New Haven's observation station and recorded data that would revolutionize human understanding of physics. The weapons being used by the Earth Defense Force operated on principles that seemed to violate basic natural laws. These ships represented technological advancement beyond anything in civilian databases. Colonel Baker directed the fleet's smaller vessels to engage the Kethfer escorts and support ships. Human cruisers and frigates used particle beam weapons that disrupted alien electronics and fusion cannons that could penetrate any known armor. The Earth Defense Force had prepared for this battle with weapons designed specifically to counter alien defenses. Captain Foster's destroyer squadron moved through the enemy formation like sharks hunting in a school of fish. The ED's Vanguard and its sister ships picked off isolated alien vessels with methodical precision. Every shot found its target, and every target was destroyed or disabled with minimal ammunition expenditure. Lieutenant Cooper engaged a group of Kethfer fighters that had launched from their carriers to attack the human capital ships. His advanced starfighter moved through the enemy formation faster than their weapons could track. The alien pilots found themselves fighting an opponent that seemed to ignore the normal limitations of physics. The human fighters' weapon systems locked onto multiple targets simultaneously and fired coherent energy beams that sliced through alien armor like heated knives through soft metal. A dozen enemy fighters exploded in the span of 30 seconds as Lieutenant Cooper demonstrated the superiority of Earth's military technology. War Commander Thectos realized his fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that his intelligence services had classified as technologically inferior. The human ships moved through space with impossible agility, while their weapons penetrated defenses that had protected Kethfor forces for centuries. The alien commander attempted to coordinate a final desperate assault using his remaining heavy battleships. If he could destroy the human flagship, then perhaps the rest of their fleet would withdraw. Thectos ordered all available ships to concentrate their fire on the EDS Retribution. The combined firepower of 50 Kethvo warships struck Admiral Parker's dreadnoughts simultaneously. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and fusion missiles converged on the human flagship in an attack that should have vaporized any known vessel. The energy release was visible from New Haven's surface as a new star blazing in the night sky. When the light faded, the EDS Retribution emerged from the bombardment completely undamaged. The massive human ship had absorbed or deflected the entire alien barrage without losing shields or suffering any structural damage. Admiral Parker's vessel continued its advance toward the enemy formation as if nothing had happened. Kate Morrison watched the battle from the colony command center and felt tears of relief running down her face. The mysterious Earth Defense Force fleet was not just defeating the Kethfor, but destroying them with casual efficiency. New Haven would survive, and the people she had sworn to protect would live to see another day. The Kethfor fleet began to break apart as individual ships attempted to escape the slaughter. Their formations dissolved into chaos as captains realized they faced an enemy that could not be defeated with conventional tactics or weapons. The disciplined alien armada became a mob of terrified survivors fleeing for their lives. Colonel Baker directed pursuit squadrons to intercept the fleeing aliens. The Earth Defense Force had orders to ensure that no enemy vessel escaped to report the fleet's capabilities to their superiors. Every Kethfor ship in the system would be destroyed or captured to maintain the secrecy of humanity's true military strength. Foster's destroyers hunted down alien vessels, trying to reach the edge of the system where they could escape. Into hyperspace, the human ships used their superior speed to cut off retreat routes and force the enemies into kill zones where the main fleet could eliminate them with concentrated fire. Lieutenant Cooper's fighters pursued individual alien ships that had broken formation. His squadron worked in coordinated groups to disable enemy vessels without destroying them completely. The Earth Defense Force wanted prisoners for interrogation and intact alien technology for analysis. War Commander Thectos found himself aboard one of the few surviving Kethfor ships as his empire's greatest fleet dissolved around him. The alien commander, who had expected an easy victory over primitive humans, now faced the destruction of everything he had worked to build. His career and his life would end in this remote system. The battle reached its climax when the EDS Retribution engaged Thectos' flagship in single combat. The alien battleship was the largest and most powerful vessel in the Kethfor fleet, but it faced a human dreadnought that redefined the concept of naval superiority. The engagement lasted less than 5 minutes. Admiral Parker's flagship used weapons that existed only in theoretical physics journals. Gravitational lances tore through the alien ship's structure, while temporal disruptors aged critical systems beyond the point of failure. The silence after battle felt strange to everyone on New Haven. For 3 days, the colonists had lived with the certainty of death hanging over their world. Now debris from 200 alien warships rained from the sky like metallic snow, while the mysterious Earth Defense Force fleet maintained position around their planet. Kate Morrison emerged from the underground shelters with 50,000 other survivors and looked up at a night sky filled with human ships. The vessels that had saved them glowed with running lights that spelled out hope for every family that had thought they would never see another sunrise. New Haven was safe, and the nightmare was over. Admiral John Parker transported down to the colony surface in a small shuttle that used the same impossible technology as his fleet. The man who stepped onto New Haven's landing pad looked like any other Earth Defense Force officer except for his eyes. Those eyes had seen battles fought in distant systems against enemies. The colonists could not imagine Dr. Carter was among the first people to meet Admiral Parker, and he immediately began asking questions about the fleet's technology. The scientist wanted to understand how human ships could manipulate space-time and create weapons that operated beyond known physics. The answers he received would change everything he thought he knew about Earth's capabilities. The Deep Strike Fleet represents 20 years of classified research and development, Admiral Parker explained to the gathered colony leaders. While public military forces dealt with known threats, we built the most advanced ships in galactic history. New Haven was our first operational deployment. Lisa Hayes had spent the morning analyzing the wreckage of Kethver vessels that fell within scanner range of the colony. The alien technology was sophisticated, but clearly inferior to the human weapons that had destroyed it. Earth had achieved a level of military advancement that exceeded anything their enemies possessed. Bobby Turner organized security for Admiral Parker's visit while trying to understand the implications of what had happened. The Earth Defense Force had demonstrated capabilities that suggested humanity was far more powerful than anyone realized. Other alien species would need to reconsider their assumptions about human weakness. Jake Phillips gathered his mining crews to help clear debris from the colony's industrial areas. Pieces of destroyed alien ships had scattered across New Haven's surface, but the damage was surprisingly light. The battle had been so one-sided that most of the fighting occurred far from the planet. Admiral Parker toured the colony's main facilities and spoke with families who had survived the crisis. He listened to their stories about the 3 days of terror they had endured while believing no help would come. His expression remained professional, but Kate Morrison could see genuine concern for civilian welfare in his demeanor. The age of isolated human colonies facing alien threats alone is over, Admiral Parker announced during a public address in New Haven Central Square. Earth has been watching the frontier territories and building the force necessary to protect our people wherever they choose to make their homes. Dr. Carter received classified technical briefings about the Deep Strike Fleet's capabilities. The information was limited, but what he learned suggested that Earth possessed weapons and defense systems decades ahead of anything in public knowledge. The implications for humanity's future were staggering. Captain Amy Foster brought her destroyer squadron into New Haven's orbital space to begin patrol operations. The ED's Vanguard and its sister ships would establish a permanent presence in the system to deter future alien aggression. No enemy fleet would catch the colonists defenseless again. Lieutenant Sam Cooper landed his advanced starfighter at New Haven Small Military Airfield and allowed Dr. Carter to examine the technology firsthand. The craft used propulsion systems that seemed to violate basic physics, while its weapons could penetrate any known defensive system. Earth's military had achieved the impossible. Colonel Steve Baker coordinated the establishment of a permanent Earth Defense Force base in the New Haven system. The installation would serve as a forward operating post for Deep Strike Fleet operations and a symbol of Earth's commitment to protecting human colonies throughout the galaxy. Admiral Parker met privately with Kate Morrison to discuss the broader implications of recent events. The Kethver fleet that had threatened New Haven was part of a larger alien empire that controlled dozens of star systems. Their destruction would eventually be noticed and investigated. War is coming whether we want it or not, Admiral Parker told Kate during their private conversation. The Kethver Empire will not ignore the loss of an entire battle fleet. Earth has been preparing for this conflict, and now it has begun. Lisa Hayes established communication links between New Haven and the Deep Strike Fleet's command network. The colony would now have access to military intelligence about alien movements and early warning, systems that could detect threats from light years away. They would never again face the unknown alone. Bobby Turner received training from Earth Defense Force security specialists about defending against alien ground forces. The techniques and equipment they demonstrated were far more advanced than then's anything in civilian databases. Humanity had been preparing for war on a scale the colonists had never imagined. Jake Phillips learned about mining techniques that could support military operations in frontier systems. His crews would help extract materials needed for advanced weapons and ship construction. New Haven's industrial capacity would contribute to Earth's growing military strength. The colonists began to understand that they had witnessed something unprecedented in human history. The Earth Defense Force had revealed capabilities that placed humanity among the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. The implications for future alien contact would be profound. Admiral Parker prepared to depart New Haven with most of his fleet, but left behind enough ships to ensure the colony's permanent security. The Deep Strike Fleet had other missions to complete and other human settlements to protect. The war against alien aggression was just beginning. Dr. Carter compiled his observations about the battle and the technology he had witnessed. His reports would be classified at the highest levels, but the scientific community would eventually learn that humanity possessed capabilities that bordered on science fiction. The universe was about to become a very different place. Reports of the Kethver fleet's destruction began reaching other alien civilizations through normal diplomatic and intelligence channels. Species that had considered humans to be weak prey suddenly found themselves wondering if Earth represented a threat to their own security and expansion plans. The Valdrin Consortium received fragmentary reports about impossible human weapons and technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of nature. Their military planners began revising threat assessments and reconsidering planned operations against human territories. The Zirathi Republic detected energy signatures from the New Haven battle that exceeded their understanding of human capabilities. Their scientists struggled to explain weapon systems that operated outside known physics, while their military commanders demanded explanations for the Kethver defeat. Captain Foster established patrol routes that would protect New Haven and surrounding systems from future alien incursions. Her destroyer squadron would serve as an early warning network and rapid response force for any threats that emerged in the sector. Lieutenant Cooper began training colonial militia pilots in basic combat techniques using simplified versions of Earth Defense Force technology. The colonists would have their own aerospace defense capability to supplement the permanent military presence. Kate Morrison broadcasted news of New Haven's salvation to other human colonies throughout the frontier regions. Her message carried hope to settlements that had lived in fear of alien attack. Earth had not forgotten its scattered children and would protect them with force beyond imagination. Admiral Parker returned to his flagship and prepared to address the broader strategic situation. The Deep Strike Fleet's existence was no longer secret, and other alien powers would be analyzing the implications of human military advancement. The galaxy was entering a new era of interstellar relations. The EDS, Retribution, and its escort vessels departed New Haven in a display of advanced propulsion technology that bent space around the massive ships. The colonists watched their saviors disappear into hyperspace while knowing they would return if needed. Bobby Turner organized celebration events for the families who had survived the crisis. Children who had hidden in underground shelters now played in streets protected by the most advanced military force in human history. Their world was safe and their future was secure. Jake Phillips resumed mining operations with the knowledge that New Haven's resources would support Earth's growing military strength. The rare metals extracted from their world would become components in weapons that would protect human civilization from alien aggression. Dr. Carter continued his research into the technology he had witnessed, while understanding that most of his discoveries would remain classified. The scientific advancement demonstrated by the Deep Strike fleet would eventually transform human civilization, but that transformation would happen gradually and carefully.